Welcome to the kill-death ratio, where I count all my kills and all my deaths. Today, I'm playing the Callisto Protocol, released in 2022 by Striking Distance Studios as their debut game, and co-directed by Dead Space creator Glenn Schofield. Initially meant to be part of the PUBG universe, that idea was scrapped in favor of making an original IP where we follow Jacob Lee as he explores Callisto's Black Iron prison during an outbreak of unknown origin. The atmosphere is tense, and the game is absolutely brutal. The developers put a lot of care into the death animations in this game, and I'll be celebrating those just as much as the kills because they are freaking awesome. So let's get to it. I select medium security difficulty and we open in the year 2320 with an alarm blaring in a city filled with dead citizens while a lone survivor wanders about. She's jumped by this dude, leaking blood out of his orifices, but that's gross, so she tosses him to the ground as a nearby security camera zooms in on her face, revealing Karen Fukuhara, mostly known for her character in The Boys, but I'm partial to her work as the titular Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. We zoom out as a TV reports on a terrorist attack on Europa, led by an organization called the Outer Way, and Karen's character Danny Nakamura. We join our boy Jacob and his whiny colleague Max as they argue about their travels between Jupiter's moons Europa and Callisto, with Jacob saying after this last delivery they'll be set for life. It's all a little vague, so we're uncertain of what cargo they're carrying, but the conversation ends there as an alert goes off in the cargo hold and we're tasked with going to check it out. We take control of Jacob, played by seasoned actor Josh Duhamel, who I recognize from Transformers and his role as Frank Dunning in 11/22/63. We search the cargo hold to discover the ship has been cut in two and boarded by the Outer Way. We sneak by them and lock the door behind us just in time. Jacob opens up the cargo door, sending them into the void of space, but Danny's not going out easily and shoots the door, breaking the glass and turning a bad situation into a catastrophic one. I climb into my seat to brace for impact as we enter Callisto's atmosphere and crash land on the surface. Thankfully, things are all hunky-dory after the impact.
I told you not to hurry! Listen.
After turning Max into Two-Face, some security units enter the ship, pulling Danny out and under the warden's orders take me prisoner as well. We get the title card, then begin the chapter letting Danny know how angry I am by giving her fuck you eyes. Captain Leon Ferris walks in and has no interest in listening to Jacob try to reason his way out of this. Played by Sam Witwer, who is no stranger to video games, playing lead characters in Days Gone and The Force Unleashed as a Deacon and Starkiller respectively. He forcefully escorts us into Black Iron Prison, where we're restrained so they can implant a device that will serve as our health bar. But he doesn't react well to this and nearly dies. We wake up in our cell and spot a purple cube, the same one seen on Europa, before Max jump scares us to show off his new dental work. We wake up for real this time with something horribly wrong going on. Our cell is unlocked, shit is on fire, people be limbless and headless everywhere, so we wander downstairs and meet fellow prisoner Elias, who hands me a shank and points me towards the control room to open his cell. I walk to the control tower using the shiv to open it up and witness some prisoner going to town on someone. We're jumped from our left and go through the combat tutorial. I kill two prisoners in the QuickTime event and turn around to see something else continuing the beatdown. It turns its attention towards me in a very harsh lesson on how not to dodge. With my health in the red, I add my first biophage enemy to the count and head back to Elias, who tells me to get to the watchtower next. I turn around in search of the elevator, but a monster stands in my way. The dodge system in this game takes getting used to. I think most gamers are familiar with button presses or timing-based system, but in this, you simply hold the left stick right or left to dodge. There is a bit of a timing element, but it all sounds much easier than it is initially, as you'll see when my deaths begin to pile up early on. My very first death is a memorable one, as the grunt punches Jacob in the face a couple times and then slowly pulls his fucking head apart from the mouth. Holy shit! I had two more deaths here due to my low health and inability to dodge, with the third death being a simple disrespectful backhand. Finally, I kill the son of a bitch and give it the old victory stomp. A little further down, I add another one of them, before moving down into solitary where a parasite pops out of the sky and gets my health down some more. I toss it off for another kill and proceed up a level where we witness a security robot brutalize a couple prisoners. Already being a victim of the ultra violence, I'm not interested in repeating that with this robot, so I sneak by it, only to get a warm bloody greeting from another parasite that pops out of this box. I continue along, adding two more kills and scaring one so bad it wriggles its way into a nearby grate, then find a stun baton and swap out our current weapon with that. I test it out by blasting this jump scaring fuckface backwards into some spikes to bring my kill total into double digits. I wind up back by the cell blocks occupied by more creatures. I succeed in killing just one before another comes up behind me, twisting my fucking neck and tossing me like a sack of shit. This particular confrontation was a rude awakening. I thought I was getting used to the dodging when in fact I wasn't. It's a whole different ball game with multiple enemies around, adding two more painful deaths and increasing my kill count up to 19 once I finally overcome. I enter the watchtower, but our pal Leon Ferris is up here too, and sneaking by him does no good whatsoever as Jacob breaks open the door panel as loudly as he can, alerting Leon to our presence and getting subdued by the force. He begins blaming me for the outbreak and questions Jacob on why the warden wanted me alive. He launches me across the room near a door with some hungry-ass biophage behind it, so Jacob quickly opens the door, unleashing them upon Leon, sending him out the window. I exit this place and proceed where another grunt jumps out from behind a door and adds yet another death. The next go-around, I paint the corridor red with its blood and shimmy over to Elias's location when a mob rushes us. He saves my ass and closes the door on them and tosses me a gun that is a much-needed addition to my loadout. Elias locates an inmate in maximum security that has the skill set to hack into the prison's network and call down a ship that Jacob can pilot off this moon. He stays back to guide us there, and on our way we watch a security guard get turned right before our eyes. I quickly add it to the count, then sneak up behind another one for a stealth kill. Beyond that, one shoots a fat loogie my way, so I shoot its head off and still get my ass handed to me. The second time I take it to Pound Town with a baton, adding the aptly named Big Mouth to the count. A couple more grunts wait nearby, and their deaths aren't even the bloodiest thing I have to do down here. In order to get through the next door, I need security credentials, and luckily for me, there's a dead guard nearby, forcing Jacob to cut into his neck and tear it out. A couple kills later, I happen upon a severed hand containing the same weapon Captain Ferris used on me earlier. Called the Grip, I put it on my right wrist and move forward where I take on 3 enemies and test the new weapon out. I finish them all off with my baton and board the elevator at Elias's request, but it malfunctions, sending me hurtling down several levels. Now I need to reset the power before meeting up with my eye in the sky, but several more monstrosities stand between me and him. I add 3 more grunts and get jumped by the worst Kinder Surprise ever from these eggs. Before I get any sort of reprieve, I kill more infected in the first fight that makes me feel like a badass. I still take some licks, but I kill 4 of these monsters in about 30 seconds time before rejoining Elias briefly. He's unable to accompany me to the SHU, the maximum security facility, as he needs to run manual overrides to get me over there. I take a gondola where 3 infected await. I kill one and get taken out by another before restarting and using my grip to toss the 3 fuckers into oblivion. Shortly after entering the SHU, I'm greeted by small waves of the biophage. Using a combination of my baton, hand cannon, and grip, I get my kill count up to 50 until a grunt blindsides me and takes me to the ground in a very Game of Thrones-esque death. The developers put so much effort into the gore of this game to extract visceral reactions from the players, I can't even tell you how many times I exclaimed audibly in awe of what they achieved. Shit, their director of creative engineering, Jorge Jimenez, went to such lengths he even pricked his own finger and used the blood to see how it changed the more it dried up.
His passion and dedication I have not seen anywhere else.
I restart the encounter and this time blast through them, forcing one of the spitters to just off itself instead of facing me. 4 kills later, I find the prisoner's cell, and as I enter, Danny jumps me and locks me inside. We really gotta work on your left side peripherals, my guy. Elias wasn't aware of her affiliation with the Outer Way, but requests her help anyway. Instead, she warns him that I'm not who I seem to be and takes her own path. Now locked in her cell, it sends me up and forces me to climb out and find another way forward, which of course is through a ventilation shaft. This game has plenty of those, so you better get used to them. I begin traversing waste processing, adding 8 more kills of various types until I encounter another security bot. This time I have a gun that does me no fucking good when I neglect to get behind cover and let it turn me to Swiss cheese. On my do-over, I add my first non-fleshy enemy to the count, then move on to add another fleshy type before coming up on a corridor rigged with a trap that was built to prevent prisoners from escaping. Look at this thing, dude. Jesus Christ. I use my grip to hold an enemy in place, but the other 2 are just plain dumb and let the trap turn them into mist. I get by the trap and get a nice view of the snowstorm outside and the habitat dome I'm on my way to. Elias says he'll meet me at the tram station in the dome, but warns us there's no signal underground, so he can't guide us over the radio. Instead, he'll guide us via hologram.
Red pipe. Track leads right down to it. I just need to follow it back.
I do exactly that, killing 2 more grunts until I'm jumped by a new variant that runs off after a brief QTE. Down here, I bump my kill total ever closer to 100 by smashing 7 parasites in one blow, and plain disrespecting some of the infected I come across. Eventually, another hologram of Elias drops a hint that we need a code, so our next step is finding the guard that has it, forcing us to inch by this dude as he stares on with envy of my maneuverability. I walk through the door and immediately get drawn to the dead guard with a bloody message above him. Here, we meet the mutated biophage that will quickly morph if you don't shoot the tentacles like the dead fellow said. But Jacob doesn't listen, instead letting it morph so he can savagely beat it down. I retrieve the code and stealth kill a couple guys before draining the water from my next goal, but as it goes through that process, a new variant attacks. The rusher is quick, but it's weak, killing all three with hardly any trouble. I climb up to the access hatch and make my way inside the structure, where water begins pooling quickly around my ankles. Suddenly, a wave hits us, sending us on the longest, deadliest water slide of all time, adding 3 deaths, with one in particular being spectacularly gruesome. At the end of the ride, a couple hooligans wait for me, but after a QTE, I add them to the count and climb up the chain to safety. Well, safety is relative, I guess, because this creepy-ass hallway has 4 grunts for me to kill and get my total over 100. Beyond that, I enter the habitat dome and get an amazing view of our location. Can I just stay here? Elias is like, no bro, and says we need to lift the lockdown before he can enter the dome from the tram station. I kill the security bot and venture to oxygen processing, where a hologram shows us a couple guards arguing, with one running off with the lockdown code. Before going to grab that, I find a schematic for a new gun and start shooting egg sacs along the way just in case. I add 7 more enemies, grab the lockdown code, and let Elias into the tram station. Due to the damage in this place, I'm forced to take the long way around because nothing in this game is convenient. Outside, by where I'd killed the security unit, a few rushers have made the trees home, popping out trying to scare me, but instead getting blasted in the face. In the next room over, I add some more kills, utilizing this fucking meat grinder in the center of the room until the grip's battery runs out. The developers did a fine job with the visuals and sound design in this game, achieving a lot of the wet, squelchy sounds by using what looks like mud, and using this insane instrument called the apprehension engine for a lot of the unsettling ambient music.
It's like a chaos playground.
Finally, I reach Elias, climbing up the sketchy ladder when some rushers jump on to gnaw my ankles, so we book it to the airlock and close the door behind us. Elias confesses he was locked up for murder, but believes he's rehabilitated, talking at Jacob while we put on a new suit that increases our health and inventory slots. Captain Ferris shows up, pissed that Jacob unleashed the biophage on him and ruined his makeup.
There's always a prize.
I offer Tree Fitty, but he sends us out into the next chapter in my favorite section of the game, and after wrestling with our helmet a bit, we start our search for Elias. I add the one mutant wandering around out here, then locate Elias, who thanks Jacob for breaking him out before succumbing to the broken visor. Danny rolls up, takes the implant from the back of Elias's neck, then rides off, leaving me to the elements where I can admire the snow effects in this game. I enter a nearby building and head down the stairs, finding people sickles littering this basement. I'm no fool and begin swinging until eventually one reveals itself to be alive. I take out all the living biophage down here and traverse across a decrepit bridge with a rusher at the end and a guy that calls out to me for help. This triggers a sequence where I battle a few enemies, but before the killing is done, the worker has jumped inside his hiding spot and torn apart. I take the poor guy's credentials and head into the access tunnels that introduces us to another new enemy variant, aptly named the Combustor. I add a few of those along with some others, calling these tunnels home when I innocently open a door and Danny is in here dirtying up my fresh as fuck suit with biophage blood. She's being swarmed by monsters, so I take the ones downstairs while she stays occupied upstairs. After that's over, she continues her hater attitude, but despite that, she provides a new shotgun and agrees to work together, parting ways with a quote creepier than most of this game.
I know who you are.
Up ahead lies a control room, but there are 2 that must be activated at the same time to open the gate out of here. Thus begins our journey to the power station, killing this jump scaring ass in the elevator. In the turbine room, I cut the credentials out of this stuck dude, and since that looked fun, I tried it out for myself in a hilariously brutal accidental death. Next time, I don't get so close and keep my butt on the stairs, showing the biophage the wonders of the turbines instead. We open up the gate and I head down to meet Danny, but outside is hella sus with all these Jack Torrance wannabes.
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Adding 7 kills to the count before boarding the snowcat. Danny takes us on a detour, stopping by my crashed ship to search the cargo, believing Jacob was transporting bioweapons that caused the incident on Europa, but Jacob is having visions of Insidious instead. A few minutes later, he inquires about her involvement on Europa, with Danny claiming it was all propaganda to cover up what's really happening. She's proven correct almost immediately when the warden shoots one of his own ships down to prevent us from leaving. It crashes into the landing pad, causing us to go tumbling down, where I miss grabbing Danny's hand here, and freefall my way into 2 deaths before grabbing hold of something and into relative safety. When I wake up, I find myself on Europa, living out what Danny experienced until our pal Max shows up again for another failed jump scare and we segue into the next chapter. Danny wakes us up in Arcus, the original colony constructed on Callisto that Black Iron Prison was built upon, but she intends to go back to the prison for answers now that our ticket off this rock has exploded. Eventually we're split up when the walkway collapses and Danny is unable to hold on, sending me further underground into Vecna's abode. Here we're introduced to the Blind, what I consider the creepiest enemy in the game that behave like the clickers in The Last of Us. I quickly add a couple to the count when one sneakily mutates to add a third kill. Mutated biophages can be tricky. Some appear dead and then mutate, whereas others will mutate mid-fight after taking enough damage. For the count, I'll add any that appear dead as 2 kills, one for their original form and one for their mutated form, but if they mutate while standing up, they'll count as 1 kill in the mutated category. This chapter ramps the enemy count up big time, adding a bunch more kills underground as I search for a way to the old colony to join up with Danny. I bumped my total all the way up to 250, with the vast majority of them being the Blind, with a few others to break up the monotony. I activate the power down here in order to take the platform to the colony, narrowly escaping a mob of enemies. This platform gave me some trouble as it sends waves of enemies my way with brief breaks in between. My biggest problem being the battery on my grip running out way too fast while I backed myself into a corner, adding 3 deaths and pushing that total over 20. What's a game you put down because you were stuck at a part and then the next time you picked it up you absolutely killed it and were left wondering why you ever had trouble in the first place? For me, it was Freebird on Expert in Guitar Hero 2, and more recently this platform because I fucking destroy these guys without being hit when I booted this part up the following morning. But with success comes failure when our first boss fight humbles me twice. Before I finally kill the 2-headed asshole. The platform docks and we transition into the next chapter in search of Danny, where several more enemies lie in wait as I traverse the colony, finding an assault rifle schematic and bumping the kill total north of 300. Eventually Danny stops responding to me over radio, leaving me to fend off these enemies all by myself and dying of loneliness twice. Finally, I get by that small skirmish and walk in on Danny trading memories via link cable. That's got her all sorts of fucked up since she attacks Jacob and causes the tower to topple over. We learn the colony was destroyed 75 years ago to contain the outbreak here, but 2-Head don't give a shit and hugs Danny aside as we recycle this boss fight, adding another death and gaining 3 kills. Speaking of recycling, another walkway collapses following Danny for what feels like the 10th fucking time just so we can kill a few more biophages before entering this suspicious looking dome. Inside the dome, Dr. Mahler, the same one that jabbed the back of my neck upon my arrival, details the purpose of this research center, citing the prisoners in Black Iron being used as test subjects for the biophage found within this creature. Most turn into mindless bloodthirsty hosts, except for one called Subject 0 that showed signs of rapid evolution. Right on cue, our favorite prison guard arrives looking like he's on his way to becoming a tyrant for Umbrella Corporation. Cue the next boss fight that's quite easy, repeating the same dodge and shoot steps until a cutscene starts and we escape into a nearby elevator. But it's not all safe here because Danny gets an unwanted smooch from a parasite. Are you sure about that? Jacob stops her from ending things right there and promises to find a cure, but the remaining security bots have other plans and toss me back in my cell. Dr. Mahler opens our cell door remotely, requesting our help and saying she has Danny in her custody and can get a cure if he's willing to assist. I mean, what choice do I have here, Doc? I traverse the prison, killing a bunch more infected on my way to Dr. Mahler's location, even adding another couple of the 2-Heads that have way overstayed their welcome. After about 30 minutes of murder, a cutscene starts with Jacob coming face to face with Dr. Mahler, who is using an inhibitor to stop the spread of the disease within Danny. He questions her about the bioweapon he found, but she doesn't want to tell him, and instead syncs Danny's memories to my implant, so once that's done, I'll get my answers. The doctor hands me a syringe I can use to synthesize a vaccine by obtaining the DNA from a subject Alpha, then clues me in on the warden's plan to unleash the virus on the prison to force the emergence of this subject. I proceed onwards until I enter Danny's memories, where Max intrudes yet again and forces us to stare at the purple cube. That triggers a memory of before the crash, revealing Jacob knew all along that we were transporting some bullshit.
And the cargo that we transported played a part in both.
We walk in on the warden having a discussion with these super friendly looking masked holograms. What the fuck? He tries telling us that we need to evolve to survive, revealing he intends to put me and his alpha weirdo into the Thunderdome in a fight to the death.
It is a gift.
Yeah, okay buddy, don't shit yourself. After he's done huffing copium, we start a repeat of our first fight together, dodging his attacks and shooting him until a cutscene shows him morphing into this Resident Evil looking monster. This final boss fight was a disappointment for me. It's repetitive and gets annoying dodging the same 2 attacks over and over as it consumes every fucking bullet you have while throwing combustors at you each time you hit its damage threshold. Mutated Captain Ferris succeeds in downing me twice, pushing my final death total to 28 before I end this slog of a battle with my assault assault rifle. I retrieve the sample while the warden tries to convince me to hand it over when Danny shows up to try and kill him, revealing he's a hologram as well. I inject the cure into Danny when the warden says he has enough data to carry on his plans and initiates the self-destruct sequence, forcing us to run out of here to the escape pods where only one remains. Jacob forces Danny into the only pod left, sacrificing himself for her safety so she can report on what happened on Callisto.
I hope he found some peace.
Spoiler alert, he didn't. Dr. Mahler's hologram shows up claiming she has a way out, but she needs his help as it's cut off by what I believe to be a hallucination of Captain Ferris back in his Mr. X form, while the game fades into a title card and we fade into the final numbers. I finished the Callisto Protocol with 379 kills and crowning a new death champion with my final total coming in at 28. I couldn't have asked for a better game to take that honor with how awesome the deaths are in this game. That gives me my worst kill death ratio yet at a measly 13.54. I completed the game in about 10.5 hours, which gives us a kill on average every 1.65 minutes and a death just about every 22 minutes. The Callisto Protocol was one of my most highly anticipated games this year and wound up being the most disappointing for me. I don't consider it a bad game by any means, but it's more style over substance. It flaunts incredible graphics and gore while skipping on the scares and enemy variety with a lackluster story and repetitive combat. The ending set up a sequel, and I'm hopeful Striking Distance is able to take the feedback from this title and build upon what they have here, and deliver a horror title that deserves to be talked about in the same sentence as Dead Space. Next up is Resident Evil 6. I'll be powering through and finishing up that series before starting anything else, but in the meantime, consider subscribing, liking, commenting, all that good shit, and I'll see you next time. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.